Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. This is episode 2. Today is Saturday, March 2nd. We have reached the end of February. We are into March. By the time any of you are listening to this, it'll probably be Sunday, March 3rd. Thank you always for joining us. We've got a lot to discuss. The NFL free agency is right around the corner. The draft creeps closer. Combine is this week, still going on today. So there's a lot to discuss. DiMari, things are heating up. How's it going, man?
I'm pretty good, yeah. Like you said, things kind of heating up, so it feels like we're getting closer to football. Combine's going pretty well. Some guys are kind of standing out that caught my eye for Dallas, definitely. And we got some big news that kind of broke within the last few days, so I'm excited to get into it and let's let the people know what they're missing, what's kind of going on within the NFL right now.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to getting into it today. March 11th is when teams can start negotiating, and March 13th is obviously the new league year, and then contracts and all that stuff can officially put pen to paper. So really, we're just about 10, 12 days away from things really heating up, from the action really getting exciting. And then after free agency, you've got the draft, and then shortly after that, you'll have mini camps, all that stuff. So the offseason surprisingly is flying by. I thought this would be a long offseason, but February flew by, and here we are in March. So we'll break it all down. We'll get into some of the rumor stuff later, break all aspects of all the different rumors. Things are starting to really heat up there. But we'll start today with the Mecole Hardman situation. This is an interesting turn of events. This was very wild. I think at first for Jets fans, you heard what Deion Dawkins had to say, which wasn't anything that bad. He was basically just trash talking and what rivalries do, going against his rivals in the New York Jets. And then Mecole Hardman comes out, publicly criticized the Jets. So before we get into the different angles and the way this took a wild turn about 24 hours after he made his original comments, what was your first reaction and your reaction to all of this stuff that went on that escalated very quickly with Hardman and the Jets?
I mean, I found it kind of crazy. This was just the same guy who just won the Super Bowl for the Chiefs and didn't even know he
Yeah.
won the Super Bowl, and now you're kind of out bashing your old team, and the comments kind of responded back to what he said was quite interesting. But I guess it kind of just goes to show you where things obviously weren't as bright for the Jets this year when Aaron Rodgers went down, but there was a lot more going inside the locker room and the organization than we know because those comments they kind of just like they were a little out of the blue. So I kind of just want to dig deeper into what kind of brought all that to light because it felt very random.
Yeah, it was odd. And that's where we'll take this step by step here, because a couple hours after these, like 24 hours after these comments were made, you get all the reports that he was leaking game plans, which is a whole nother thing in itself. But yeah, the first part of it all is a lot of what he said is true. Like, we've known this for a while now with the Jets, is their locker room's not very good. They don't have a very good culture. He mentioned a couple times in there how when you're inside the locker room, it's kind of do whatever you want. The game plan isn't good. The offensive staff's good. Like, we know that as the Jets. Like, Nathaniel Hackett stinks. Robert Sala's not very good. Joe Douglas hasn't built much of a team outside of trying to bring in Aaron Rodgers. We know the ownership's terrible. We know last year, once Rodgers went down, they gave up on the season. Like, all of that stuff we already knew. Was that kind of your takeaway stuff there? Like, a lot of it wasn't really surprising. A lot of that we knew from the bombshell report from The Athletic that basically was 30 sources inside the Jets building saying how all the issues, all the coaching staff failures. That was kind of what Mecole Hardman was, repeating. And that part of it was true. Like, what was some of your takeaways from that before we get into all the rest of the stuff?
I mean, yeah, I think you kind of seen it throughout the season as the season
Mhm.
progressed because eventually Dalvin Cook grew unhappy with his role and he was so excited to be there during the offseason
Yeah.
and not getting the carries, not getting the touches that he wanted out. And you got, again, a healthy scratching who was supposed to be your starting receiver, Alan Lazard, throughout the year. Garrett Wilson, times where he was frustrated. Zach Wilson, I know that report had came out once after he got benched where he was like, if they go back to me as the starter, like, I'm
Yeah.
not doing it. So, it's definitely something in the locker room, and it's kind of hard to believe that it only comes down to Aaron Rodgers being hurt. It feels like that's something where that has always been an issue, but Rodgers was kind of just the broom to sweep it all underneath. And then when everything went down with him, that's when everything came back up. So it seems like the team's very divided, and that's just not a way to be successful, especially in that division that we're talking about, where you got some pretty good teams. Like you guys need to all be together, especially if you want to dethrone Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of problems, and that's the way the Jets attacked this all was bringing Aaron Rodgers. They hope could cover up some of that stuff, and especially this year more than ever, going into this offseason, the whole thought process is we know Joe Douglas isn't very good. We know Robert Saleh isn't very good. We know Nathaniel Hackett stinks. We know Keith Carter, the offensive line coach, players on the Jets, Brees Hall and Mekhi Becton publicly came out and criticized him. Like we know their coaching staff is terrible. That's the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. I keep saying it. It's kind of Aaron Rodgers like prison in a way. It's Aaron Rodgers where he's doing whatever he wants. He wants all these pieces in place. He knows he's going to get all the control, and that's what he's got. He's got all the control. It's not a very good building. It's not a very good culture, but they hope that Aaron Rodgers can sweep some of this stuff under the rug because this is still a team that won 7 games last year with an absolute circus quarterback room. I mean, every guy that took the field was arguably the worst quarterback in football. You still found a way to win 7 games. You've got one of the best defenses. The hope is, all right, Aaron Rodgers is back, even with all these problems. Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Fame quarterback, can win you 10, 11 games, even with these issues. You were able to win 7 with no quarterback. So that's kind of what they're doing. You know, whether or not you like that plan, it is what it is. I don't think many people do. I think there's a lot of people that would like to see some more changes with the Jets, but myself included. But that's the way it is. Rodgers wants it this way. That's how they're going to get it. So what Mecole Hardman said there from that standpoint was definitely true. We've known that for a while that all those issues were occurring. But then this is where things get interesting is you see Sauce Gardner and Kenny Yeboah both tweet out about leaking game plans. Now, Sauce deleted the tweet. I believe Kenny Yeboah kept it up. Morstead also put a tweet out there as well, which really kind of lit the fire. He was the first to tweet, then Sauce, then Yeboah. You know, just a typical Tuesday in February in Jetland. You know, just a typical Tuesday afternoon. Nothing to see here. But all of that goes on, or Wednesday, I apologize. That was all happening Wednesday. And then you hear reports, Connor Hughes, beat reporter for SNY, confirms the report that he was leaking game plans. So what was your reaction to that? Because, look, this is where it first was a bad look on the Jets, and then this quickly turned 180, where all of a sudden Mecole Hardman looks like the complete loser in this situation, where he's leaking game plans to other team, affecting the integrity of the game. And he also asked the Chiefs to try and trade for him, which is tampering, which the Jets will definitely look into, as Douglas said in his press conference on Wednesday at the Combine in Indy. So what was your reaction from that portion of this incident?
Well, two things that I took from that. The first being, we talked about it when the news leak where the two teams that, or the few teams that end up losing, which Philly was one of them, I'm just going to throw their name out. Everyone deserves kind of, I guess, to be fired for losing to a team where you knew
Yeah,
exactly what
with
they were
Zach
going to
Wilson at
do
quarterback.
with Zach Wilson. Your quarterback threw 3 interceptions. You were up 14, whatever. But it kind of makes me look into the situation with the Jets and like, was Zach Wilson really as bad as we kind of seen from our perspective with taking into consideration everything that's now coming out? Because I mean, if a team is prepared and they know what you're going to do coming into the game, it's nothing really you can do around it because you game plan for this team going into all week going into that game. Like, you got an X amount of plays that you're going to run and, just a whole list of what you want to do against certain opponents. So if your opponent knows that going into the game, of course, it's going to make anybody look bad. So now it kind
Yeah.
of, in a way, just makes you think like, was Zach Wilson really the problem, or was the fact that this playbook getting leaked kind of throwing the piece into what made him have such a bad season? Because now I'm starting to think, man, maybe Zach Wilson deserves some grace because you had one of your own, someone that you consider a teammate, someone that you consider a brother, kind of just outing you guys. So it's a bad look, and I kind of feel bad for Zach Wilson now.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that's too it. Just the whole Zach thing. That's why it's best for him to just go elsewhere, find another opportunity. We'll get to him a little bit later on with some of the possible destinations. Um, it's weird though because those games where actually the game plan was leaked, he actually played kind of well in, and that's the weird part is that Eagles game. I wouldn't say he played very well I wouldn't say he played well in the Eagles game. He was game managed. He didn't make the big mistakes. It was really the interception by Tony Adams in the fourth quarter off of Jalen Hurts and the Brees Hall rushing touchdown. But that Chiefs game where they leaked the game plan, that was like the best game of his career. So maybe leaking the game plan actually helps Zach Wilson. But no, yeah, I mean, all seriousness, yeah, Zach Wilson, it was never going to work here, right? Really, right
Yeah.
after, I would say that where he got benched, on in 2022, not this past year, but the year before that, on primetime Thursday Night Football on the Jaguars. When he got benched, the Jets should have just let him go because his confidence was at an all-time low. He got benched at home in a primetime game. There's no coming back from that, especially in a market like New York, especially in a game like that where the Jets at that point were 7-7 right in the playoff race. They should have got rid of him right then and there. The Jets did do him a disservice by bringing him back another year, trying to let him sit behind Rodgers and then make him the backup quarterback where they threw him into the fire 4 snaps in. So, yeah, Zach Wilson, it certainly doesn't help when you have players giving up the game plan. It doesn't help anybody. And that's where Mecole Hardman, it's a major problem. It's affecting the integrity of the game, giving the other team a chance to win. Now, I know he did tweet out and say that he would never do that. He always wants the best for the team. He always wants to win, but I don't know, this seems too true. And in the tampering aspect as well, like it's going to be really hard for Mecole Hardman to get another job in the NFL if all of this does come back to be true. Would you tend to agree with that? Because yeah, it's a terrible look. All of a sudden, out of this situation, as we see here on Saturday, the person that looks the worst is Mecole Hardman. And at first, we all thought it was going to be, another jab at the Jets. Look at the Jets. Another week, another headline for the wrong things. And now all of a sudden, Mecole Hardman is ending up in the headlines for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it kind of just feels like a salty ex-girlfriend. I mean, just going back to his career, like you're with the Chiefs and things don't work out, you end up getting moved around, and now you're on a team where you're not happy. So it's like, well, let me just force my way out of here. We see it a lot in the NBA with James Harden, to be specific, to just throw one out where when things kind of get rough, you kind of just go your own route, do whatever you want. 'Cause I mean, I guess by any means, nobody wants to keep anyone that's leaking playbooks.
Yep.
So just the whole way for him to go about it was really shady, and then to end up back on the Chiefs where he wanted to trade, where you leaked the playbook against, like and Patrick Mahomes and that team has a great chance to get to the Super Bowl. And I don't know, it's just weird. His whole thing of how he kind of handled the situation is weird, but it also reminds me during the Hard Knocks, one of the episodes where his prediction was Jets 49ers
Yeah.
in the Super Bowl, and now you're leaking playbooks. Like I don't know, but if he does get when that time does come when the Chiefs kind of move on or whatever the case is, if all this is 100% confirmed, I don't see him playing the NFL again.
Yeah, it's a terrible look. I mean, this is almost, especially the NFL with the whole gambling policy that they have, where Ridley got suspended for an entire year. If you're going to suspend guys for an entire season gambling on sporting events, like other sporting events, or NFL games that don't, I think it's NFL games that you're not involved in, or whatever it is. I don't know the whole policy, but if you're going to suspend a guy for a year like that, you definitely should be suspended for
Oh
leaking
yeah, absolutely.
game plans. And that's the whole thing. Like, just my thought on the gambling policy. That's the whole thing, is the concern that there's that potential where somebody could bet on another team to win and then all of a sudden not go out there, give 100%. So then they win their bet, and that affects the game, affects the outcome. And that's happened before prior in sports with the whole Black Sox scandal many years back in baseball. Like, it's a major problem. And then the tampering too. I mean, the Chiefs might have to give up a draft pick here, which hurts them. I mean, I'm sure they'll be fine, but they have Patrick Mahomes. Draft pick's not going to mean a whole lot, but it's a bad look. So I was thinking the other day, as you look at the 4 parties involved in this, the Jets, of course, Hardman, Eagles, and the Chiefs. I made a ranking because I guess I'm like this. So out of the team people that out of the parties that should be most embarrassed, Mecole Hardman, Eagles. Eagles should be second most embarrassed. I think they should be more embarrassed than the Jets because you lose to Zach Wilson when you know the offensive game plan. And Zach Wilson also was the cause for your downfall. I mean, after that game, they were never the same. Then they ended up losing to the Niners a little bit later on. Like, that was it. I also think that it's the Jets at 3, Chiefs are 4. Chiefs don't really have much of an impact here. They won the Super Bowl. They couldn't care less about a random game that happened in October, whether they beat them, but Zach Wilson played well. They're not going to care about that. The Jets are 3. They're behind the Eagles, I think, because we've always known this about the Jets. They're not very good. The Eagles losing to Zach Wilson, knowing the game plan. That's a awful look for Nick Sirianni. Terrible. So how would you rate the
Yeah, I was gonna say
embarrassment list here?
I think I'm gonna go off of this list. One, I'm gonna go with the Eagles at 1. I mean, best team at this time, best team in the NFL. I think they had one loss up until that point, or they might have still been undefeated. I don't remember exactly. And again, if I'm correct, they were up 14 points at a point of that game. So for your MVP quarterback to throw 3 interceptions and one of them being that ends up losing you that game
Yep.
to Zach Wilson, who you had the game plan against one receiver, that's all you got to stop. And Garrett Wilson, I mean, come on now. I mean, that's awful. That is so awful. Number two, I'm gonna go Mecole Hardman because I mean we are missing a key part of this whole interaction, which is what Thomas Morstead said. It's like when you're guaranteed millions,
Yep.
of course you're gonna be a bit upset to lose minutes to an undrafted rookie, which if I'm assuming that's Xavier Gibson that we're talking about here.
Yep.
So I mean, we're talking about somebody who was supposed to just be a return specialist, and you come over here with Aaron Rodgers because you think you're guaranteed a Super Bowl. And now we're talking about you're during the season and you're not even playing, and this undrafted free agent took your spot. I think I would be a little upset too. Not enough to maybe leak some playbooks, but I mean, you're the guaranteed starter going into camp, and we're halfway through the season and you can't even see any playing time. That's gonna be number two for me. I'm gonna go three with the Jets. I think I agree there. I mean, I think with everything going on, it kind of makes them look better because you beat a few good teams with your
Yeah.
playbooks. You know,
Yeah.
kind of getting leaked, and a guy who was supposed to be one of your
Boost
best
the.
weapons, I guess.
Yep.
You know, kind of outing you, and you still find ways to win games with Zach Wilson. Jets at three, and then
Boost the
Chiefs
trade
at
value.
four. Absolutely. I mean, if Denver didn't want him before, and you know, we say this all the time, I think Denver should want him now. But Chiefs are going to be number four for me. Kind of, I mean, regardless of however that game ended, they probably still would have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
really matter that much. So that's going to be my list on that. Just bad look for Philly. Terrible,
Yeah. Yeah.
terrible look for Philly.
Not a very good look. Hope maybe the Jets get it first now for Zach. You know, playbook, winning games. Who knows? Just saying. That's not going to happen. That is never going to happen. Jets will never get a first round pick for a bust at quarterback. That won't ever happen. But I will say this. I'm glad you mentioned the Morstead stuff and the Gibson. Like taking a shot at Brant Boyer because you lost the job to a rookie, just like that's just ridiculous. Taking a shot at the special teams coach. And I'll admit, I was pumped up for this season. I was fired up. Believe me, I was fired up for Aaron Rodgers, all that stuff when I was at training camp. I went to 2 training camp practices, but I will say this, and I'm not lying about this just because Mecole Hardman now is taking a shot at the Jets. I was very happy with the Mecole Hardman signing, all that stuff, but I will say Mecole Hardman, when I was at training camp, was very impressive. Or I apologize. Xavier Gibson was actually very impressive at training camp. Hardman, I thought at training camp, the 2 days that I went, he had a couple drop passes. And when they ran special teams drills, I thought Gibson just had a larger burst. I thought he was just a little bit more. They call him. He's got like silent feet. They say quick feet. Good making guys miss. I thought he was just a lot more slippery, a lot more quicker than Hardman was, and I believed that then. And then you see what he did on Monday Night Football, where he returned that kick. Like Gibson deserved that opportunity. Just looking back on it now, to be upset that he lost the job to the rookie, like that's on you, dude. It doesn't mean you should
and,
be leaking game plans now. It's ridiculous. It's terrible.
and you know, I kind of again, like I'm really not understanding where he's coming from with that. Because I mean, the Jets were kind of at this point of the season where it's just like we got to find somebody that's going to give us anything. So I mean,
Yeah.
if Hartman kind of wasn't giving you exactly what you need, it doesn't hurt to give another guy a shot that you know might be that burst that you need or that boost to the offense. So for you to get mad about a rookie taking your spot, like you just said, that comes down to you because I mean that's
Yeah.
not just happening on Sunday to Sunday. That is Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday, whatever practice prep you're doing throughout the week for multiple weeks. So obviously, like you're in practice and you're not at the standard that they want you to be, especially to be a starter or someone that they can rely on. So I mean, that really just comes down on you not getting the job done. It's that simple. We don't need to take a shot at the coaches and everyone else just because your feelings are hurt. I mean, it's a you problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know he caught the game-winning touchdown to win the Super Bowl. That's the easiest catch he ever made of his life. Okay. It was in the flat, wide open. Mahomes is throwing you the football. It's the easiest play ever, right in his chest. Number two, Zach Wilson probably make that catch. And Foles did it in the Super Bowl too. You know, saw Nick Foles show off his hands as well. But not to take that away from him, he almost single-handedly lost the Chiefs that game against the Bills. When he fumbled, it was a touchback. So Mecole Hardman just got to take a step back here. The guy's acting like he's achieved so much in his career You're lucky. You are so lucky you guys beat the Bills, or else you would have been the story of the offseason for all of the wrong reasons, fumbling that ball after the Chiefs got the turnover against the Bills to have a touchback, and then the Bills get the ball back. You would have been in the papers, back pages for all the wrong reasons. So he's lucky with that. And then Adrian Amos as well tweeted out, taking a shot at the Jets. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. He was on the Packers last year. Zach Wilson went in you and beat you. Was on the Jets this season, and they released him, and then goes to the Texans, and the Jets beat the Texans at home. Also got beat by Zach Wilson. So please, you have no room to talk. You got smoked the last 2 seasons against Zach Wilson and the Jets, once in your home building. I do not want to hear you open up your mouth on Twitter and comment on a situation. You went to Houston, played the Jets against Zach. Zach was broken. It was the end of the year. Jets were done, and you got cooked. You lost 30-6. So please, don't want to hear from Adrian Amos as well. You got no room to talk.
I mean, it's almost the most. It's always the most random players too. Like prepare for the playoffs. Like what? Like prepare for enjoy the off season. Like why are we taking shots at former
ridiculous
teams because you again got your feelings hurt? Like I don't know. Go do something productive. We're over taking shots at a guy who is already kind of struggled in his career,
Yep.
and you can't be that bored. But then again, it's the NFL for you, I guess.
Yeah, it's like it's being a dead horse. Like Zach Wilson's, he's done. He's toast. He stinks. We know that. No need to take shots at the organization. We know we're not good. We understand that. We haven't been to the playoffs in 13 years. We haven't won a championship since man landed on the moon. No need for people to keep coming at us here. All right, so moving on here to the combine, which is obviously still going on. Quarterbacks today, receivers, I believe, as well. So definitely some takeaways there. There was some of my, you could both start off here with some of the takeaways. I could give some of the defense stuff, and you obviously I know have some offensive takeaways as well. Just some stuff off the bat here from defense standpoint. Devondre Sweat from Texas is insane. This was a guy that I really like. Some of his press conferences was pretty funny. Had a good sense of humor to him. Definitely a guy I think teams could definitely like, just because of the humor he brings. Seems like a good dude to have in the locker room. He's 366 pounds, and he ran a 5.27 40-yard dash, which is just crazy. Almost 400 pounds, and he's running 5.27 40. He's unbelievable. And he backed it up, too, because he said, watch my 40, and he dominated.
So, future Dallas Cowboy there. I know that Dallas has kind of been interested in it, so keep him in Texas, move him up the road, Austin to Arlington. I'd love to see that one. I think that's going to be a great pick for anybody who takes him.
Yeah, he was really cool. I've watched that 40 back a lot. It's just crazy how a guy his size, his stature can go out there and do that. And of course, had a very good career at Texas, and potentially could stay in Texas if he heads on over to Dallas, get an opportunity to play with the Cowboys. Braden Fisk, another guy from FSU, 4.78 40-yard dash. That was actually the quickest amongst defensive linemen or defensive tackles. So that was another one there. And then just some more Jets related notes that I have. Brock Bowers, although he wasn't on the field that day, he did speak to the media, and this doesn't mean the Jets are drafting him. I doubt that happens, but he did mention 2 quarterbacks that are on his bucket list to play for in his career: Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers. So potentially, if he's there, could become a dream come true for him to play with Rodgers. We'll see. And then Talisi Fuaga and Jackson Powers Johnson, 2 offensive linemen that'll probably go in round 1. Fuaga potentially at 10 to the Jets. Supposedly, according to sources, were some scouts and some teams his favorite interviews. Supposedly, they hit their pre-draft interviews out of the park. So 2 guys that are going to be out there for teams that are looking for the offensive line. Potentially 2 AFC East teams. Dolphins looking for interior help. Jackson Powers Johnson could be their guy. Jets looking for tackle help. Talisi Fuaga could be their guy. So just some Jets and Dolphins AFC East related notes there as well. What were some of your takeaways from the offensive side?
So I'm really going to go receiver focus here, since considering that Michael Gallup news broke that he might not be in Dallas anymore. They might ship him. I really like Donnie Mitchell, what he kind of put together today. Obviously, Combine is still on now, but 4.35 unofficial 40 at 6.2. I mean, that is some speed that you can compare some speed you compare definitely with CeeDee Lamb. But if he doesn't fall to Dallas, I think anybody is getting quite a steal out of him. Not even really considered a steal. You kind of know what he brings from Texas, and also spent some time with Georgia. And just now Texas being in the SEC, something about those SEC receivers really getting the lead and make a huge difference. I'm going to stay in the SEC with Georgia's Lat McConkey, who had a pretty impressive combine as well. I know he's probably coming in to be a slot receiver, but I mean, if you watch any Georgia football, you kind of know that he is one of those ones. I highly doubt seeing Dallas take him, but I do think that's a great fit for a Jets team who are in desperate need of a slot receiver now with one
Yeah.
of their best now on the Chiefs catching touchdowns in the Super Bowl. So I feel like he might be, maybe a day two guy, middle round, day two, pretty solid. And we talked off air. I know this one's going to be a very sleeper pick, but I mean, Luke McCaffrey, we kind of talked about him. Christian McCaffrey's brother, 4'4", 40, 6'2", 190 pounds, I believe. I mean, had a very impressive season at Rice. We looked it up. 71 catches, 992 yards, 13 touchdowns. But you're not going to get that same recognition as some of the bigger schools and the bigger players. But I mean, I think that can be a sleeper for the draft. I mean, those McCaffreys, they do pretty well in the NFL. So I think
Yeah.
anyone's kind of willing to, take a shot on them, maybe give them an opportunity, might find something decent, find a gem in him.
Yeah, and the Luke McCaffrey stuff is definitely something to keep an eye on. I know, like we said, we were talking about it off air. A guy that definitely could catch on to a team and make some noise. Had a very good very good year last year at Rice. Was huge monster season. Got better after 2022. Had a huge year, which is what you want to see out of these guys' development, getting better throughout their college career, which he did that last season. Another guy too that is in that category of Luke McCaffrey, more the underrated guys, is a guy that I've been looking at a little bit and hearing a lot about is Malik Washington from Virginia. Kind of a little bit of like a do-it-all receiver. He's not Deebo Samuel. I'm not saying he's Deebo Samuel, but kind of that guy that can do a little bit of everything. If you need him to, can run on a jet sweep, multiple routes, play the slot, play the outside. Like he's more that versatile dual threat type receiver. Definitely a name to look out for. And yeah, the Jets as a receiver needy team. If there was ever a year for you to need a receiver, it would be this draft because there's a lot of big names. And we've talked a lot about guys like Brandon Rice. We've already talked too about Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, both boosted up their stock at the Senior Bowl a couple weeks ago. So really good draft. And I think a lot of these receivers too that are going to be successful, some of them might even go in the middle rounds. Like it's more of those middle round guys.
Yeah.
You got the Malik Neighbors and the Roma Dunzes. They're really good. Don't get me wrong, but I think you really might find some of these gems, and of course Marvin Harrison Jr. as well at the top of the list. But I think some of these really good gems that might even be better than some of those other guys are these mid rounds guys that have shown a lot of really good things. And for the Jets, that third round pick that they have, I think is going to be massive. Third pick, 72 overall. There's going to be some of those guys on the board. See if they could take advantage. So, who would you say is like your biggest? I guess now that we're on the topic of some of the receiver, who would you say is like your biggest draft day steal for a receiver? Like, who is your favorite under the radar receiver in this draft? Because there's a lot of them.
That's tough. I might say Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. I feel like that's kind of somebody that is very, again, under the radar. I mean, you don't hear much about him, but then again, you do because he did play at LSU. But I just feel like that's somebody who could step in and maybe be a third option on a team with a very good quarterback. I would say not a great quarterback, but somewhere maybe you throw him in with like the Chargers or somebody like that, where he doesn't have to do too much, but as long as he's reliable and available, I think he can step into a team like that. I know Dallas also spoke to him, so just a few teams with some good quarterback play that do like to throw the ball a lot, and just that you can find consistency from the other guys, kind of to give him a lot of one-on-one opportunities against linebackers and slot corners in that slot position. I think that's my one that I feel whoever takes him, they might get a gem.
Yeah, he seems like he's in the it's like Malik Neighbors kind of took over the spotlight from him.
Yeah.
Both at LSU. Neighbors definitely got the more attention. Not taking anything away from Neighbors. He's definitely a monster and deserves all the attention. But Brian Thompson Jr. was almost like he got more of the daylight while Neighbors was more in the spotlight. I really like, I've said it for a while, I really like Ricky Pearsall. I think this is a guy that potentially could be that first round talent. I've watched a lot of his film recently. He's probably one of my favorite mid receivers in this draft. I also like Johnny Wilson, but I just think I feel like Ricky Pearsall's probably got a higher floor than Johnny Wilson. I think Johnny Wilson, his ceiling's very high, but you really don't feel like his floor might be a lot lower than what some of these
Yeah.
other guys are. And I think that's a little bit concerning, especially for the Jets being in a win now mode. You want a guy that can come in and make an instant impact. I feel like Johnny Wilson might be more of a maybe like a project in a way, if that's the right word to use, because he's very good, but he's got a lot to work on. Athletic freak, but I think Pearsall, just that versatility, could play the slot, could play the outside, which is what the Jets need. I really like him a lot. I also like Troy Franklin too from Oregon. Really like him. Borderline first round, borderline second round talent. Don't think he'll fall all the way to round three, but another guy I like as well. And then the two Texas receivers, Donnie Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, who we've talked about, like them. But there's a lot of guys, loaded draft for sure. So looking forward to that. Any other takeaways from the combine before? Well, I actually have one more takeaway. I guess we could talk about it now. But the Caleb Williams stuff. What are your thoughts on Caleb Williams before we get into that? Like, do you believe in him? I know we talked about this last week. We're both on the train now. It's not going to probably happen, but we're both on the train of Bears should hang on to Justin Fields. While that probably won't happen, that's what we think. Do you think Caleb Williams is going to pan out in this league? Are you at all concerned with some of this combine stuff where he's not doing anything at the combine?
At first I was, and I don't want to say the word got over it, but I guess I'm gonna say I understand kind of why he chose not to do anything at the combine. Because again, I told you about a friend of mine who does writing for A to Z Sports. Kind of just wrote an article on why players decide to not do anything at the combine, and it made sense. Where just say a guy doesn't run as fast as they like to, or maybe their shuttle drills isn't as nice, they're not throwing the ball as well. It can be a bunch of different things to where they don't perform as well in the combine. So it kind of hurts their draft stock, which I don't think that's one of those things for Caleb Williams, but I guess I get it with him and Drake May kind of being neck to neck for some. And apparently JJ McCarthy now one of the better quarterbacks in the draft. Um, I guess Caleb Williams didn't just want any slippage where possibly he can be putting that being taken as the number one in jeopardy, which I highly doubt it. But we see what he can do on film. I am not extremely high on him. I do think the Bears should stick with Justin Fields, but I get it. I guess. I mean, at the end of the day, he's going to get taken probably first, definitely in the
Yeah.
top three. So just without any opportunity of slipping down even a little bit, I guess if you got to sit out, you got to sit out.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't love it. And I've really never been on, I haven't been on some of the stuff late in the year just seemed a little concerning. His play kind of dropped off a little bit. Um, you hear the weird stuff about, wanting to go to a team and all these different things they might want to do. Like,
Ownership of the team
yeah,
that drafts, yeah,
yeah,
crazy.
I don't know. I just feel like he might be, I don't want to put the diva label on him already because that's just not fair, but he just might be not exactly your leader that you want at quarterback. And I don't know, just a little bit of concern there. Now, I will say this every year, I feel like we always have conversations, everybody in the NFL, there's always that conversation where like the number one, everybody knows unanimous quarterbacks going number one, whoever that quarterback is. I feel like there's always a conversation about why they're not good or there's issues with them just to try to stir the pot a little bit. Like I remember when Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence were the unanimous 1-2. We knew Trevor Lawrence was one, but you started to hear at the combine after you saw Zach Wilson's pro day, people were like, Zach Wilson might actually be better than Trevor Lawrence. Like he can do this, can do that. He's got a higher ceiling. People were saying, oh, Mormon Mahomes, all this great stuff. That never happened. But, you know, there was that conversation of the number two being the better than number one. I feel like that's the same thing here, where maybe it's just all of us trying to create a little bit more drama in the draft. And Caleb Williams is going to be great. He is going to be good as advertised. But I don't know. For me, it's more so the talent's there. We know the talent's going to be good. It's just more the concerns about the locker room and the off the field stuff, which I think there was some concerns late in USC and in some of the stuff behind the scenes. I don't know. I don't love it. I still take Drake May. I think Drake May has just got the highest floor. I think he's the safest pick. Williams, there's a little bit of a risk there, but it'll be interesting. And I also think too, part of it is me. I like Fields. I think the Bears should hang on to him. That's part of it as well. So I don't think he should be the number one pick, but that's the way it's going. So that's really what it seems like here. And Marvin Harrison Jr. as well didn't do much stuff as well, which isn't I guess too surprising when you see Caleb Williams. So top two players in the draft. kind of quiet at the combine, but it is what it is. You never
Yeah,
know. You truly never know.
end of the day, the game is played on the field, and
Yep.
they got enough tape kind of to show what they could do. But I think it still would have been pretty nice to see GMs kind of be able to see him non-game action. I know, again, I mean, all the time you're going to be playing full speed game environment, but just to kind of see them in the drills and stuff that you really don't get a chance to see unless they're going to participate at pro day. Kind of those things that you
Yep.
don't get to see, their preparation going into things. I think it'd have been nice for them to participate, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's like you said. It's all comes down to the field. They're going to be taking top three. It's if Williams doesn't go one, he's going to be the second quarterback off the board, and I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is easily going to be the first player off the board. I think that's pretty obvious. You could probably see a world where, okay, Bears go Caleb Williams. Let's say Washington goes. I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. is getting past four. I think Arizona's going to take him at four if he's there. He's going to be a top four pick. I think the first three teams probably take a quarterback. Cardinals go four, and then from there on out, it's still kind of an unknown. But these guys are going to get picked. Everybody's going to hype them up. We'll see. Play on the field. That's all that matters. So going into some of the rumors now, because there is a lot to unpack, and really over these next week or two before March 11th, March 13th, and all those dates that coming up once the new league year begins, tampering period, all that stuff begins. There's going to be a lot of rumors. So there's already a lot. We'll start with a pair of Vikings teammates. Now we'll start with Kirk Cousins because he's actually a free agent. Justin Jefferson, it's more just trade rumors, and I still feel it's highly unrealistic that he actually gets traded, but we'll discuss the rumors. We'll start with Kirk Cousins here. There's been some reports that the Falcons are involved in Kirk Cousins, would like him. There's also been some reports that the Falcons also want Justin Fields. That would obviously be via trade. We'll see how all that plays out. But what was your reaction to the Kirk Cousins news? Um, one of the top, obviously, really him and him and Baker, the top quarterbacks there. What is your reaction to Kirk Cousins news? Of course, coming off of a torn Achilles, um, Falcons potentially being interested. Obviously, other teams probably as well involved.
So yeah, I'm going to talk about Cousins and Jefferson. I'm gonna circle
Yep.
back to Fields. The thing I kind of hate about the Minnesota situation, it's when starting quarterbacks get hurt. I guess we get this sense of like amnesia where we kind of forget how good teams are with their starting quarterbacks as you watch them so long with backups and rookies and whatever the case is, where the teams
Yep.
look completely discombobulated, and then it's like everybody panics and just wants to move on. I mean, Justin Jefferson being in trade talks is absolutely ridiculous. This is the team where you can compete for the division. I mean, I think every year with Kirk Cousins, they're capable of 10, 11 wins. And I know that is still a lot, but especially in that division. But I mean, we've seen how good like that team can be. I mean, Kirk Cousins is not a slouch quarterback. Like with all due respect, he is pretty great. And you have Jefferson, you have Addison, you have TJ Hawkinson. Like you might have some of the best weapons on paper, like throughout the NFL. So I kind of don't see the point of moving any pieces around and just bring your quarterback back. And obviously, Alexander Madison got released. So now you go sign a running back with this running back heavy free agency market, and you just run it back with a healthy quarterback. I'm really not understanding why they're talking about moving on for Jefferson and don't want to sign Cousins back, and Kirk Cousins probably going to Atlanta, which wouldn't make sense for the Vikings, one, because who are you going to bring in to replace Kirk Cousins? But also number two for Atlanta, if they were in a win now, like we're a few players away from a Super Bowl, then that would make sense. But I mean, you are centuries away from a Super Bowl. You don't have a shot in the
Yeah.
world to win the Super Bowl. So I really don't see the point of wasting I don't the money on an older quarterback. I mean, if you're going to go quarterback, you take Justin Fields, you go ahead and you trade what you need to trade, and you kind of just build around him. You do still have a young team with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Like you got some young guys. So just go with the youth and build the team from there. You're in a division that's not that great, so I'm not really understanding the Cousins to Atlanta unless it's, we need a vet for these younger guys and kind of get us over the hump. But again, like you're not in a Super Bowl window. I don't see that happening no time soon. So I think you're better off going with Justin Fields, who I think would love to be back home and play for the Falcons. I think that might be that boost that he kind of needs, that fresh start. So if I'm Minnesota, I mean, I'm not trading Jefferson. I'm re-signing Kirk Cousins back, and I'm going to run it back, and we're going to try to go dethrone the Lions. And for Atlanta, let's bring in Fields, hometown kid, and let's go win the division. I think it's that simple.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's smarter for Atlanta to go with Fields, the younger option. I could see though their mindset on Kirk Cousins a little bit might be, our quarterback play since Matt Ryan left, it's been bad. We haven't really figured out, we haven't found the options. We've had these issues. Desmond Ridder was nothing. They maybe thought they had something, a developmental pick in the middle rounds when they drafted him. Never turned into anything. Had a horrible year last year. Their mindset might be 1-2, like you said, 1-2, kind of a stopgap, a bridge quarterback for 1 to 2 years, maybe get him into the playoffs, keep him competent, keep these young guys happy, help develop these young guys with a veteran in that room, which they never really had, and then go maybe draft a quarterback or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I agree. I think if you're gonna bring in a quarterback, it's got to be a younger option. Let them build around him. Let him build chemistry with young guys, because let's say they do bring in Kirk Cousins and he's there for a year or two. Bijan Robinson, all those guys. Then they're gonna have to learn a new quarterback, build chemistry with a new quarterback 2 years later anyway. It's kind of setting things back. I think a good landing spot for Kirk Cousins, like a really good landing spot. And I know this probably won't happen because many reports have said that Pittsburgh is not going to go out and bring in an outside option. But I really like the idea of potentially Kirk Cousins in Pittsburgh, because they won 10 games last year with arguably the Jets were the only team I would say that probably had a worse quarterback room than the Steelers last year, right? They had issues all over the place in that quarterback room.
Yeah,
They
I
still
think
won
I
10
agree.
games, got to the playoffs. Mason Rudolph started a playoff game for them. Their defense, while they had some issues late, if their defense can get back to what they were earlier in the year, many people believe TJ Watt should have won Defensive Player of the Year. They had Defensive Player of the Year candidate in TJ Watt. They've got some guys, of course, Porter Jr. They've got some pieces. Joey Porter Jr., the corner that I believe it's just second year entering the season. He continues to develop. If the defense can play more like it did earlier in the year, and you still have George Pickens, you still have Pat Freiermuth, you add Kirk Cousins there, it's not crazy to think they can win 10, 11 games. They won 10 games with Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, and all these different guys. Like, they can win 10, 11 games with Kirk Cousins. And in an AFC, look, I don't think Kirk Cousins is good enough to beat Mahomes or beat Allen, but you never know. You get into the dance. That's really what it is. So I think Kirk Cousins, that's probably the best, I would say, destination maybe for him. Would be a team like that, more of a team that is more in a win now mode, like you mentioned, rather than a young team rebuilding. And in the Justin Jefferson stuff, yeah, I don't understand it. Maybe it's a little bit of Justin Jefferson pushing for a trade, maybe behind the scenes, because if he realizes, hey, Kirk Cousins isn't coming back, who's my quarterback? I don't want, the quarterback play last year was, speak of bad quarterback play, Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall. I don't want those guys. No. Those guys, obviously, I don't want them. I want a good quarterback, and maybe that's him realizing Kirk Cousins might not be back, pushing for a trade, going elsewhere. But this is a generational talent. This is the best receiver, one of the best receivers in football when he's healthy. A guy that played 10 games last year and still had over 1,000 yards. The dude's a monster. You trade him first, it's going to be a haul, but it just wouldn't make sense to tear it all down. I mean, the biggest issues with Vikings have been their defense. It's not been because of their offense that they've lost games. It's been their defense. And unfortunately, this year, you have Cousins who tears his Achilles. Jefferson missed 7 games. You had no quarterback. You caught a little bit of something in Dobbs, but, in AFC North, where it is now finally, they're getting better. Like, the Packers got things right. The Lions are really good. The Bears, we'll see what they do, but they've got some pieces. They're there. We'll see what decisions they make. But in a division that's getting better and has a bright future, it makes no sense now to take a step back and rebuild. Like, they're never going to compete with the Packers, the Lions, with, Nick Mullins at quarterback week 1. You can't tell me you're going to, with a straight face, roll out Nick Mullins out there next year with Justin Jefferson at receiver. It's terrible. So that's why I feel like maybe it's some of it's behind the scenes, but it's
and
interesting.
I know some of Jefferson, it's been reported, like, it's no secret, is that he's hesitant to sign a long-term deal until there is certainty of who's going to be the quarterback next year, and he
Yep.
wants Kirk Cousins. We understand that, but like you just said, I mean, you're looking inside that division, and outside of Detroit, who I think they can still compete with very well, there's no need to blow it all up and kind of just go get rid of the best receiver in all of football just because you are kind of shying away. I don't want to say shying away from competition, but that's what it kind of seems like. Where it's just like, well, if we can't get the quarterback, we might as well trade you. And who cares about a division? Like, let the Lions have it. This is not the time to do that. And I think the NFC is still pretty wide open. I know this previous season it was San Francisco for a lot of the way, but I mean, back again to that Detroit game, there's kind of some things here and there that would, if it went a little differently, would have seen Detroit playing in the Super Bowl. So
Yep.
the NFC is wide open right now. The Niners are still the team to beat. It's literally the Niners and everybody else. So if I'm the Vikings, I mean, I'm going all in. I'm going to sign Cousins. I'm going to keep Jefferson. I'm going to pay him the money that he is more than deserving. You get TJ Hawkinson back. You still got Jordan Addison. Again, you go sign a running back. You know, I kind of seen Tony Pollard was a possibility for the Vikings, which is a nice change up back where maybe he needs a fresh scenery too outside of Dallas. You kind of boost that offense up and touch up the defense a lot because, like you said perfectly, the defense is usually the problem. But you just help the
Yep.
defense out, and I mean, you go try to go win a division and you go compete in the NFC because it's for anybody's to grab right now.
Yeah, it is. I just don't quite understand, like you said, tearing it up. You saw what happened last year when Kirk Cousins wasn't there. The season fell apart. I know they struggled a little bit early on, even with Kirk Cousins, but they started to find a little bit of a rhythm prior to him tearing his Achilles. And yeah, it seems like Jefferson likes him. Look, Cousins, they can win a division. They can get to the playoffs with him. I don't think Cousins will ever, and like we've mentioned, I don't think Cousins will. He's never going to be elite, but he's going to give you a chance. He's going to get to the playoffs. Once you're in the dance, you never know. And if he plays like he has played throughout his time in Minnesota, and that defense gets better, you were spot on with the NFC. They can beat anybody, and they can. It's not crazy to say they can beat the Packers. Even beat the Eagles. It's not crazy to think that. I mean, look, the Eagles. I mean, I know their defense should get better, but Justin Jefferson, and they could go in and beat the Eagles with Jefferson obviously leading the way. It's not crazy to think that. So yeah, tearing it down when the rest of the division's getting better certainly makes you question. Now, I will say this about Jefferson. If he's going to get traded, he's going to be a number one. There's been a lot of fans out there, Jets fans I know, that say get him to the Jets. While that would be awesome, he's not going to the Jets to be a number two. He wants to go to a team to be a number one. I'm sorry to say, if Justin Jefferson comes to the Jets, he's the number one. Garrett Wilson's the number two. It's just the way it is. He's not coming to the Jets to be a number two receiver. He's going to want to get paid as a number one receiver, not as a number two. So I don't see that happening. A team I could see, though, reports say that they're out on Mike Evans. If the Texans go out and strike a trade for Justin Jefferson, I do not see a world how they are not at least in the AFC title game next year. Would you agree? I mean, that would be crazy.
If Houston somehow ends up with Justin Jefferson, I mean, I don't know that it's already a thing to try to find out who can dethrone Patrick Mahomes. But if Houston ends up with
Yep.
Justin Jefferson, I mean, you might as well stamp their ticket to New Orleans for the Super Bowl. I
Yep.
don't see a lot of teams that will be able to beat them. I mean, they're obviously not going 17-0. I'm not saying that, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, come playoff time with the second year Stroud, Jefferson, Collins, hopefully Schultz back, Tank Dell, you got nothing but speed and talent on the offense for a quarterback that is already looking like one of the best in the league. I mean, that's going to be a nasty offense.
Yeah, that would be unbelievable. I don't know who really is stopping them if they do that. Um, Look, I don't think Jefferson will get traded. I think he'll stay in Minnesota, but a lot of it relies on Kirk Cousins. I think at the end of this all, where would you say Kirk ends up? I mean, I don't know. I think the Steelers still are just thinking off the top of my head, Kirk Cousins to the Steelers probably the best fit for him. But I mean, I guess when you look around the league, I don't like it. I just don't see a world like if Tampa doesn't re-sign Baker, I don't think they'd go out and get Cousins. I don't see that happen. That'd be a weird fit. to not go after a free agent quarterback and then spend probably even more money on Kirk than you would have had for Baker wouldn't really make much sense. Pittsburgh, Atlanta, like we said, I don't know. I don't know who else. Do you have any other team? Maybe Washington. Maybe I don't know. I mean, probably not. They're probably going
Only
to draft a quarterback, but
only other team, and I don't see it happening, that really needs a quarterback is the Raiders. But I
yeah,
mean,
that's
they're
true.
not in a situation really where they can win. Maybe if they do get another free agent, which they did say that they're not going to really target a receiver in free agency, which is kind of spin the face of Devontae Adams. But
Yeah,
if they happen to kind of go against their word and get another receiver that's pretty solid, and they're like, okay, now we're a quarterback away,
yeah,
that possibility, but I don't see that happening like whatsoever. I don't think there's any ties, connections of Kirk Cousins and the Raiders. So I'm liking the Pittsburgh one. I think that might be the most realistic one.
yeah. The Raiders is interesting though because I could see Devontae Adams wanting that because he's seen what Kirk Cousins was able to do with a talented receiver like Jefferson. He can get him the ball. He had 1,800 yards with him. Like I feel like Devontae Adams would trust him to feed him the rock. Easily over 100 receptions, easily over 1,000, 1,400, 1,500 yards. Like I could see Devontae Adams wanting that, but I just don't. Yeah, I don't see the Raiders doing. I think
Yeah.
the Raiders are probably going to want more of a young future option. They seem to like Aiden O'Connell for a weird reason. I don't know why. But it is what it is. I guess that's the way they do things over there in Vegas. Vegas is weird. So, anyway, moving on here to Mike Evans and the Tyron Smith stuff. Both of these stories have really kind of broke here over the last 24 hours or so, and both definitely impact the Jets, which two guys that I would love to see wearing green and white. Now, you're a Cowboys fan. We'll start with Tyron Smith there. From a Cowboys fan perspective, what is your reaction to this? Tyron Smith out, has spent all 11 seasons, or I apologize, all 13 seasons in Dallas. 2-time first team All Pro, 3-time second team All Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler. Has been one of the best left tackles, has been at the top of his game his entire career. One day we'll probably end up in the Hall of Fame. What is your reaction to him moving on here from Dallas after 13 years?
I'm really not surprised. I know there's been some health issues over the
Yeah.
course of like the last few seasons. So I'm it's not a shock to me that they decided to move on. I mean, at the end of the day, you do want, again, like I said earlier, the best option is for someone to be available, and he just hasn't been there,
Yeah.
hasn't been healthy and available like Dallas would like. But when he is playing, I mean, like you said, he's one of the best left tackles in all of football, future Hall of Famer. So, for Dak Prescott this upcoming season, it's kind of hard to find a guy that you can trust like Tyron Smith protecting your blind side. So I don't know where Dallas kind of goes from here, but it feels like maybe this might be the trickle down effect of bad things more to come later on. Because I mean, this was just Jerry Jones talking about they're going all in, and this is a Dallas team that is close to the Super Bowl. I really don't believe close, but close to a Super Bowl, and we
Yeah.
see how the postseason kind of pans out. But a few tweaks here and there with coaching and maybe game planning and discipline in the playoffs, and this team can be in the NFC Championship. And this is already starting off with Tyron Smith gone, and Leighton Van Der Esch might retire. I know I'm kind of going off of like the original, but I think it's starting to trickle down now. We're starting with Tyron Smith, and there's going to be a lot of other guys down here where Dallas might lose a lot. So I think that Tyron Smith one is going to definitely come back to hurt, because I mean he felt like he was one of the OGs for Dallas, and now he's moving on. So I'm kind of curious on where they go from there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Jets attack it from a Jet perspective, if they go after him, or if they go after more of a David Bakhtiari. And that's the problem. And I've always said this. If you're a free agent and you're in the open market, there's going to be a downside. That's why you're available. Everybody that's available, there's always going to be some sort of downside. Some players more than not. I mean, I don't really see many issues with Mike Evans' game, even though he's available. I think more of it is he's trying to get most money. You can maybe say age, but he has shown no signs of slowing down. But from an offensive line perspective, most likely when they're available, it's because there's some problems. And for Tyron Smith, he's great when he's out there, but he hasn't been out there very often. And his last full season was 2015. It's 2024. He's only getting older. That's a little bit of the concern. Now, he is my top target, though. I would take him easily over David Bakhtiari. Number one, he's better. Number two, he's while he's been injured, he's a lot less injured than David Bakhtiari. Like Bakhtiari in his last 4 seasons, 12 games in 2020, 1 in 2021, 11 in 2022, 1 in 2023. Over that time, he's had 5 knee surgeries. So not nearly as bad as Tyron Smith. Um, that's why I would take Tyron Smith. Look, he's played 161 games, started all of them. The dude's a veteran. He's been in the league forever. Um, you know, like if he was healthy, he would be easily go out there, give him every single dollar. But the age and the health are still a little bit of a concern. But when he's out there, he's dominant. He's been 8 Pro Bowls, part of the 2010s All Decade team. So it'll be interesting to see if the Jets do that. But I don't know, just the name itself. Like I would get excited if Tyron Smith is protecting Rodgers' blind side since week 1 or in week 1. I would. The name, the history of what he's done. Ideally, you pick him up. Maybe he misses 3 games this year at max, but you do have that risk of him playing 5 games, and all of a sudden, what happened last year is happening again, and you can't have that happen because then that could cause a complete change in everything in the offseason next year. Just the whole point of the Jets are walking on thin ice. All of these moves mean so much. You go out and pay Tyron Smith all his money, he plays 5 games, that might be the end. So it's
Yeah.
it's a difficult decision, but I don't know. I still feel like the Jets are going to go out and get Bakhtiari, which I want. If they're going to bring in Bakhtiari, he better have training camp competition or he's got to be the swing tackle. He cannot be the week 1 starter, just handed the week 1 job. Or if they're going to pay him, give him an incentives-based contract. Like pump the contract up on incentives where he's got to reach certain marks, like 8 games or 10 games, this many starts, this many snaps. Because you cannot rely on a guy that has had 5 knee surgeries, played 1 game last year, to play at least 10 games this season. You just can't rely on a guy to do that. So we'll see.
Well,
But
I won't be
it's gonna be
surprised
interesting.
if it's the same with Tyron Smith, like we just said, considering his injury history as well,
Yeah.
where you can throw a bit more chunk of money at him, but a lot of it's going to be incentive because simple
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we just need you to play. So it definitely is an upgrade, and I don't think it'd be a bad move for the Jets. It's going to be weird to see him in different colors, but you know, kind of where Rodgers is at in his career coming off that Achilles injury, I think that's definitely option one to protect your quarterback is Tyron Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree there as well. I just think too, like you said, he's just a better player as well. Not even just the injury stuff. He's the better player. Bakhtiari's had a successful career, has played with Rodgers, been to 3 Pro Bowls, but I mean, Smith's been in the league, more experienced. I mean, they're both very experienced, but he's just, in my opinion, better than Bakhtiari, top of my list for sure. So moving on here to Mike Evans, the other piece of the puzzle that is now available, hitting the open market. The guy's a monster. I've been looking at Mike Evans' numbers more and more recently with the possibility the Jets may be landing him. And I'll admit, this guy I think has got to be the most underrated receiver since he's entered the league. He has 1,000 yards every single year. And I know we say that a lot, but that's just crazy. Even the best receivers that has ever played the game, none of them really have ever had 1,000 yards every single season. Like, this is a guy every single year. He's played 154 games and has had 1,000 yards every single season. It's crazy. And he's shown no signs of slowing down. He's going to be 31 when week 1 rolls around, but the guy's a monster, ninth in the league in yards, tied for first in touchdowns. That was last year. He's a beast. Very underrated. Over 11,000 yards in his career. What are your thoughts on Mike Evans, and what are some of the potential landing spots for him? Do you believe he can slot into?
Well, looking right here, so if this is true, his market value is 23.8 mil, which I don't think is too crazy of a number considering somebody like you just said who is almost guaranteed for 1,000 yards every
Yep.
season, available. You know what you're going to get out of him, and just doesn't seem to ever take a play off, no matter if he's targeted or not. I know
Yep.
his history of kind of some things with the Saints,
Haven't
Marshawn
seen. Yeah.
Lattimore, but Evans is not a guy that's really taking plays off, and you just know what you're going to get out of him. He's a winner. He wants to win. So
Yeah.
23.8 mil, like if that is the correct number, I don't think that is too crazy. I mean, considering that Stephon Diggs' average salary is 24, Devontae Adams is at 28, Cooper Cup at 26, just looking at a few guys here. I mean, Evans is a big difference maker for whoever decides to get him, and I feel bad for the Bucks because that offense is going to look so different without him being there. Obviously, if he doesn't resign, which I don't think he will, I mean they want to let him test the market, especially a player like that where a test the market's kind of good luck finding something else. But that's Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Somebody is going to throw that money at him. Won't be surprised if the Chiefs is one of those teams.
Yeah.
So
Yep. I agree.
he's deserving of it. I mean, one of the most consistent receivers in all of football, future Hall of Famer. I honestly think so. It's kind of a bad look for the Bucks, but whoever's willing to go ahead and pay that money to Mike Evans, I mean, your team just got a lot better with him being at your receiver position.
Yeah, the Chiefs would be a very intriguing destination for Evans, especially a guy that's already won a Super Bowl, knows how to win, knows what it takes. The year with Brady, um, that would definitely be a big destination. That might be probably at the top of his list. He's 31. He probably going to want to go to a team that could still win now. And I know the Bucks were in the playoffs last year, and if he doesn't go back to the Bucks, which he still could, Todd Bowles I know said he'd like to have both Mayfield and which he better because without them he might not have a job right now. For being honest, for Todd Bowles. So, but for Evans, yeah, it's the Chiefs definitely a good destination. I would say the Texans, but it doesn't seem like the Texans are very much involved. And of course, too, you have the Jets. I think that he's got to be the top. Him and Calvin Ridley are probably the top now priorities. With T. Higgins, of course, getting tagged. I don't see a tag and trade with Higgins happening. I think that's not going to happen. But yeah, I think he's got to be the top. Now, I will say this: Jets have to watch out because I could see Evans, like you mentioned, wanting to get the most money possible and potentially using the Jets as leverage or using any of these teams as leverage. He might be in the back of his mind say, "I really want to return to Tampa, but I'm going to go out test the market. I'm going to get a team to raise the price really high, and I'm going to tell the Bucks, hey." This team's giving me all this money. I'm going to go there. Or you can match that offer, give me more money, and I'll come back. And that's where I think he might use a team. I could see that happening where he still wants to be in Tampa, but he's going to test the market to get another team to bid high for him and to get the Bucks to bid even higher, get even more money, and then just return to Tampa in the long, in the aftermath of all this. But that's why I think the Jets have to be smart. You do have to put your chips in the center for Evans. I think you got to try and give him as much as he wants, but you also have to watch out for that potential scenario where he might just want to be using these teams just to get back to Tampa, which certainly a possibility. And then that's where you probably pivot for Calvin Ridley or somebody along those lines, Pittman, somebody like
Well,
that.
looking here, the teams with the most cap space: New England, Washington, Chicago, Tennessee, and the Colts. So for a team like, I'm just gonna maybe throw out the Colts, who
Yep.
are, I mean, they were a drop away from moving on the making the playoffs.
Yep.
So I mean, just say a team like the Colts, if you do franchise tag Michael Pittman and you got the money to just throw it at Mike Evans, and when you get Anthony Richardson back, you still got Jonathan Taylor. I mean, that's a team that can make some
Yeah.
noise, and I think similar to the Texans, could be a team that Mahomes has to look out for. I really don't see any other ones. I mean, Chicago might be interesting as well with they want a receiver to pair with DJ Moore. Darnell Mooney is testing free agency. So whether that's Caleb Williams or Justin Fields, I mean, you get a duo of a trio of DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison, and Mike Evans. I mean, that's a tall group of receivers, but anything to help your quarterback win. And going back to how we were saying with the division, where the division is kind of wide open, we do think it is the Lions to lose, but you're kind of in a situation where if you got the money to do it and you can get the pieces there, why not pull the trigger on it, see what you can get out of it? So I think two of those teams there could be quite interesting. I don't see it happening, but just considering that the money that they do have and what Mike Evans wants, and like you're saying, where he could kind of test out a few of these teams and go back to Tampa and kind of flaunt what contract he's getting. If they want to throw a bag at him, they definitely could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. See a world where Dallas.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, Michael Gallup is probably already played his last snap in Dallas.
Yeah.
Lamb is due for an extension. I think it's going to come down to when can they get the Dak extension done, if they do it, and how much
Yeah.
of cap opens up. Because I mean, a lot of the few guys they have, uh, a lot of that money is going to hit as a post June 1st cut. So you got to wait quite a while. So I don't see it happen. Feel like it's very, very unlikely Mike Evans ends up in Dallas. And Jerry Jones never attacks the big name free agents anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm not even going to get my hopes up on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Just another team to throw, I guess, into the ring. But yeah, I don't see much happening there as well. I think the other teams that you mentioned, that we both mentioned, probably are at the top of the list. So one other topic here to close things out is Zach Wilson. Joe Douglas gave permission for him to seek a trade. Now, I've got some sad news here about the Broncos propaganda.
It's not
According
happening.
to reports, the Broncos are among a few teams that are not interested in Zach Wilson, not expected to pursue him. So rest in peace to the Broncos propaganda. It was a lot of fun. It lasted from about, December 2023 to what are we? Saturday, March 2nd. It was a good period of time. Was ready to order the Zach Wilson Broncos jersey to hang up behind me to successfully capture the Broncos propaganda trophy, but that's not happening. So it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Um, I'll be honest. I don't really know where Wilson's going to end up. I think there's a couple teams I wrote an article on about a couple weeks ago that could be interested. I'll throw a couple teams out there, and then you can throw a couple teams, and we'll close things out because I know many of you probably think that you're probably the better. Many of you watching this probably are actually better than Zach Wilson at quarterback. So don't want to spend a ton of time on it because I highly doubt Zach Wilson actually turns into anything. But a couple teams that I just had in mind. The Chiefs are a team where if he wants to sit a year or two, there's not a better opportunity to sit behind Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Now, I do believe that Wilson would benefit from sitting a year or two, but I think there's two ways he could look at this. Say, I want to go to a team where I could sit for a year or two, or I want to go to a team where I can compete for a job. The Chiefs are under that category where he could sit a year or two, learn, watch, absorb knowledge, and then potentially get dealt to another team where then he can compete for a job. So I think that the Chiefs are a team. I would say the Rams, but the problem with the Rams are Mike LaFleur is the offensive coordinator. There are many reports that the reason LaFleur got fired was him and Wilson supposedly never really had a very good relationship. So I highly doubt Zach Wilson would go to the Rams, if that is true, to try and rewrite his career, to try and get his career back on path with the offensive coordinator that he first had. I just don't see that happening. I know McVay would be great for him, but I just don't see it. So the Rams probably wouldn't happen. Those are the teams that he'd probably sit. There is a lot of other teams. I also think the Niners could be a team where he could sit and watch. Darnold, of course, went there, sit in the Shanahan offense, watch and learn. I think could definitely be beneficial. And then a couple of teams that he can go and potentially compete for a job. The Raiders, as we mentioned, if he wants to go out to Vegas to compete with Aiden O'Connell, have some competition there. I did talk about the Broncos obviously for a while there. Going to Denver, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. They were my other team on that list that he potentially could sit and compete. I don't know. Maybe another team that he can maybe compete is maybe a team like the Falcons, maybe where he could come in and compete. Other than that, I don't. The Steelers, he would be able to compete there. I just don't see the Steelers going out for Zach Wilson. So those are some teams that fit kind of both criteria. The teams that he could sit and watch, some of the teams that he could sit or come right in and potentially play. Look, it's a high risk, it's a low risk, high reward for a team that goes out and brings in Zach. I think the money is a little bit it does have an impact in a negative way, but I think the Jets at most you probably get a fifth, sixth round pick. I mean, you got a fourth and a second, I believe fourth and third or second for Sam. You're not getting that for Zach. Probably get a sixth round pick, maybe a pick swap. What are your thoughts on the Zach Wilson landing spots and potential deal?
Is it bad? I don't think I see a realistic scenario where he ends up anywhere. I mean, I know it sucks to say, but especially seeing this past year how important a backup quarterback actually is, but
Yeah.
I just don't really see a team that may willingly, just throw out some draft picks there for Zach Wilson. If I had to maybe think of one, which is I still don't think is realistic, is the Titans. I know they kind of got a lot going on in that quarterback room, and I think Will Levis might be the starter next year. I think Tannehill is a free agent, if I'm correct. Um, Malik Willis, we kind of heard some things coming out of there where they kind of didn't believe in him. And remember, he was possibly supposed to be the next up after Tannehill, and then you go get Will Levis.
Yep.
So Tennessee, I feel like might be one of those teams where, again, I really don't see that happening whatsoever. But it's just not too many that I can give you where I think they're going to be willingly giving up a 5th or 6th round pick for Zach Wilson. I don't see it.
Yeah, it's a lot lower than Darnold. He showed nothing in these 3 years with the Jets. He's shown absolutely nothing, if we're being honest. The guy, he was terrible. He was the worst quarterback in football. I think teams see maybe the arm talent and the athleticism, and they think they're going to get everyone. But let's be honest here. How many more times do we need to see a quarterback that's DeStrongle that's not any good? Everybody's like, oh, if he goes elsewhere, like we've seen this before. We've crossed this bridge before, seeing a quarterback fail in one place, people saying, oh, go elsewhere, you'll be good. It's not going to happen. I don't think Zach is ever going to turn out to really be anything. At best, he'll be a glorified backup, similar to Darnold. He'll be a top 3 pick, backup. You can watch the BYU highlights all you want. That's not him. That's not anything what he is now. He can't read a defense. He needs a lot of work. I think if he goes to a team to sit, it's got to be like the 3rd string where he's not even worried about playing. That's best case scenario for him, but we're not going to get much for him. I think a team will still bite. They'll look at his film against Houston this year. They'll watch the film against the Chiefs, see some other games, and they'll say, you know what, there might be something there. Maybe we can get out of it, but I highly doubt he does anything. I mean, I've been very hard on the Jets. I'm very hard on the Jets. I've said for a while, I thought they really genuinely ruined Sam Darnold. I don't think they ruined Zach. I just think Zach stinks. That's really what it is. I think it's more so Zach's terrible than the Jets actually ruined him. Now, I know they didn't give him a ton of good coaching. I get that, but he wasn't any good. Darnold had nothing. They at least gave Zach receiver and gave him a running back. They didn't give Darnold anything. They gave Darnold 90-year-old Frank Gore and Chris Hogan and Rashad Perriman. That's what they gave Darnold. So, and they gave Le'Veon Bell too when he was washed. That's what they gave Darnold and Gase. A lot worse than what the Jets gave Wilson. They actually tried to build around him. They got Conklin. They brought in Garrett Wilson. They got Brees. He had a chance in 2022 to take things over, and he didn't. He's gotten benched 3 times in his career. He's not good. He got benched for Tim Boyle. That's going to hurt the trade value. So, any other closing thoughts here before we finish things off on a Zach Wilson note?
I know the Jets have done a lot of hurt to you, but
sorry,
I don't know.
I'm used to it.
No closing thoughts. No closing thoughts outside of that.
Watching Zach Wilson takes a toll. Having Zach Wilson flashbacks as we speak right now. Interceptions all the time.
Well, I guess
poor throws.
I will close it off with briefly. I mean, you can either watch Zach Wilson throw a football, or you can watch your team win 12, 13 games and get beat by 60 at home in the playoffs every year.
Yeah. It's a grueling experience either way.
Same team, different colors. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, at the end of the day, you don't win a championship, it doesn't matter. So it's about the gist of it. So that will do it for another episode of Inside the Huddle. Make sure to please like and subscribe. We'll have a lot more content coming your way. And stay tuned. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. See ya.